All right, thanks everybody for joining this morning. Just a few housekeeping items before we get started today. Today's session will be about an hour with time for question and answers throughout the session. This webinar will be recorded for future viewing, so please note that participation in this webinar qualifies for free CME credit, and the CME link will be provided at the end of today's call. Any resources that any of the coaches mentioned today will be shared as well. And we encourage questions, comments throughout. Just go ahead and throw those in the chat. If you want them asked anonymously, you can send them just to myself and I will share them. Let's see. The panelists today have no financial relationships to disclose. And again, as I mentioned, this webinar is approved for 1.0 AMA PRA Category 1 credit. So before we get started today, I just wanted to take a moment to share a bit about LifeBridge. It does exist to support physicians across the state through confidential, accessible wellness resources, whether that is coaching, educational webinars like this one, or support during challenging moments in a medical career. So our goal is to help physicians build sustainable, fulfilling careers while caring for their own well-being. So for today's session, you don't need to know anything about coaching. You don't need to be considering it, and you definitely don't need to have a problem that you're trying to fix. We're just here for a conversation today. So, in medicine, you're often expected to already have the answers and figure out things on your own and keep moving. And so coaching really offers something different, and it creates a space for us to pause and reflect and just think a little more intentionally about how you're showing up. Um, so again, today is not a sales pitch for you guys. It's not a therapy session. It's really just an honest conversation with our three fabulous LifeBridge coaches that we have, and just talking about maybe what brings physicians to coaching, maybe what tends to happen over sessions, and what kind of shifts that people might experience over time too. So our coaches might share some de-identified things or scenarios throughout the call, and we'll also talk about some tools like the DISC. And how they're used to support self-awareness and communication. And so with that, I'd love to introduce our coaches and get the conversation started. So I'll let you guys all introduce yourself in just a few words and kind of what your background is and what you kind of enjoy about coaching. So we'll just start with Dr. Schaefer and then Dr. Sell and then Dr. Davis. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen here so everybody can see. So Dr. Schaefer, I'll turn it over to you.
Sure. I'm Dr. Joanne Schaefer. I'm a family physician by trade, and I practiced for several years at Creighton University, and I was associate tenure professor on the academic track. And then I went into 11 and a half years as in public health. I was the chief medical officer for the state of Nebraska. After the governor termed out, I went to Blue Cross Blue Shield, and I was the chief medical officer and then an executive vice president. I helped start Fake Whole Person Healthcare at that job. And then after that, I went to a venture capital firm that started some healthcare lines of business. I helped them do that. I started as a consultant, then they hired me as their president. And so I had some experience with that. After that, I started my own healthcare consulting firm and became a certified integral coach, and then started being the medical director for LifeBridge. And so currently that's what I'm doing, and I absolutely love it.
I'm Michelle Sell. I'm a family practice physician in Columbus. I'm a Nebraska farm girl. I grew up in rural Nebraska, and then I went to college at Nebraska Wesleyan and the university for med school. And then I graduated from Clarkson Family Medicine, and have been in rural practice since then. I have kids, and so I had kids in medicine and raised kids in medicine, went through divorce in medicine and transitioned practices. And so one of the things I really appreciate about LifeBridge and about coaching is that we have a wide variety of life experiences and just kind of that real life stuff that goes on the side. And so I'm happy to share that with people and kind of help navigate some of those life transitions.
Mark Davis. I'm in Norfolk. I came to Norfolk right out of residency, have some experience. My initial practice here was with a partner, and for various reasons that ended. And then I was solo practice doing OB for 25 years, delivered over 10,000 babies in that time frame. And I don't know how I took care of family at the same time. So I always tell my kids they're really lucky that they have their wife. And then about I think 2018, I transitioned to an employed physician by the hospital. So I've been in a partnership, solo practice, and then an employed physician, and can see all aspects of that. And then about 6 years ago, I transitioned initially part-time and now full-time as one of the vice presidents at Faith here and the chief medical officer. So it's really interesting seeing the different aspects. I've had some appointments in ACOG as well, so worked on the national level on that. That was always kind of fun to meet new people from both here and outside the country, and it's interesting to hear everybody introduce themselves and just look at the varied experiences we've all had.
Yeah, I agree. That is one thing that we really like to say about our program is that we have a wide variety of experiences and a range of experiences for our coaches here. So I just wanted to kind of kick it off and start. What tends to bring physicians to coaching in the first place, or do you see kind of common starting points across career stages or specialties? And I might just, Dr. Schaefer, if you want to start it off, and then maybe whoever wants to pick up after that.
Yeah, I think, sometimes people come to coaching because they're considering a career change or just going into a different area of medicine that they haven't thought about before and they have questions. And sometimes what we do best as coaches is just ask more questions and get them to think about the why behind what they're searching for and what they're looking for to achieve in their career and what they haven't done and what they might be considering as way of leaving a further footprint in what they want to do with their medical degree, because there's so much we can offer with our training. And that's one of the things I found out as I switched careers is I had no idea the other things that I could do with my medical degree. And you really can have an impact in multiple areas other than just patient care. Not that patient care isn't a big deal, it really is. And you can do volunteer work, but you can have policy impacts and public health impacts and impacts to direct the way venture capital money is spent, for instance. And our expertise just goes so far beyond patient care that sometimes when people enter coaching, we just ask more questions and we have various tools that we can give you and exercises we can give you to kind of get to the what is it that you're looking for, kind of to fill that bucket some more.
A lot of people, or many of the people that I've encountered, end up in coaching because they feel isolated. There's a lot of pressures from a lot of places. And so sometimes they've just been really short coaching appointments. And it's just like, hey, there's a tension at work or with my staff that I need to work through. And we're happy to work through that. But a lot of times we can fill a niche that's not there. And so we get it. We've been through medical school and residency, and we understand, the headache of prior authorizations and the stress of, potential litigation and all those things. And a lot of times I think it's hard for people to find that person who can just be even who just gets it, And so my approach, like Joanne said, we oftentimes will ask a lot of questions, and I'll often tell people when I start coaching them, you have space to dump it all out on the table. Like just throw it all out. Nobody's gonna be critical or hold you accountable or anything like that. And remember that we're not discoverable. And so this can be a really just safe space. And I think that's probably where I've connected with most people is it's hard. There's so many pressures from so many places. And this is a place where you can be you and discover who you are and where you've come from and where you're going and how to navigate a tricky situation. And it's just, like I said, just a safe, secure place to do that.
And I would second what both of you said. I think that sometimes I found that they just need somebody to talk to. That it's hard when you're in medicine because a lot of people don't understand medicine. They don't understand stresses involved, et cetera. And so sometimes they just need somebody to talk to. You can pick which coach you would like to deal with or to work with. And because of my background in both solo practice and administration, et cetera, that's what I've done a lot of is people have had some issues going on with some medical staff issues, behavioral issues. And so I've done a lot of that side of things. And they think that, and I can understand coming at it from both sides about how it looks at. I've dealt with some people too with some career changes, like Dr. Schaefer said, and not necessarily that they wanted to make those changes, but there's things that may be forcing that. So it's been real varied. And that's nice is you can look at our backgrounds and say, hey, I'm an OB. I'd like to talk to another OB because they can understand that.
Yeah, and Dr. Davis, that kind of brings up, we talked a lot about the different experiences that all the coaches have. So could you guys speak to what are really the common things that you individually see as coaches? Because I would say majority of the physicians that come into our program specifically choose a coach for a reason. And on our website, it has some of your guys' background. So could you speak a little bit about what do you see the most?
Well, for me, it's what I just mentioned. Actually, most of what I've done have to do with medical staff issues, behavioral issues. Um, I think some medical staffs are treated very well. I think other medical staffs are not treated so well, and I've run into that. I think we try to do that very, very well and be very fair. So I have that background to say, okay, this is what could happen and should happen, and also kind of the career changes. Um, I've dealt with that as well. And the ones that I have dealt with are more, okay, I've got a health problem now. I can't necessarily work 70 hours a week and be on call. What do I do next? And that's most of what I've seen.
I've had some that have been in trouble. And, it's been everything from I've lost my license and I need to get my license back. And I'm going through the whole, process. But I'd like to talk to somebody confidentially about that because it's been really hard. And I got my first lawsuit, or I'm going to trial for the first time. And these are really scary things. And I've also I just got my first talking to for not being professional. I've had several of those. And, that's where a DISC assessment can be really helpful because we can talk through all of those communication skills and how they show up and how they get angry and when they get under stress, how they appear to others based on their personality and their basic, brain wiring and how they go down, a typical path of how they show up. So those evaluations can be really helpful. So those are really common, but I've also had several retirement, transitions to retirement. And sometimes physicians have a hard time first having the conversation about retirement, fear of just being fired if they even bring up the word retirement when they want to, go through the steps of decreasing their hours, worried about finances, things like that. And then what are they going to do after retirement? What are the hobbies? What are the travel plans, the things that they want to do? And they're worried about giving up their identity as a physician and seeing patients and what does that look like on the other side. So we kind of craft out plans. So those are some of the common things that I've dealt with, as well as career transitions.
I would say I've had a lot of conversations about work-life balance and kind of the opposite of giving up your identity as a physician is creating your identity, both as a physician and as everything else that you are. And
Yes.
so we've had a lot of conversations about that. Yeah, navigating and transitions in life and career, changes and things like that. And we want to be involved early when something sits not quite right. That's when we want to chat with you and help you kind of settle with that. I've had a few people, who come and they're like, I don't know if I should go or stay. Well, quitting medicine or staying in medicine those are two options, but there's a whole spectrum in between. And so, of course, we want great physicians, right? We want you to be able to be in the ranks with us and practice medicine and be happy and productive. And but we want that to feel good, and we want that to um, be representative of why you came to medicine in the first place. And so, Yeah, I would just say it's a lot of balance stuff. I don't, I laugh to even say the word burnout because it's, but really it is, before you hit the wall and before things feel hopeless and overwhelming, that's when we want to work with you just to help some of that settle better.
I would add that I've had a couple that have been in not good relationships, not good environments, and some I've coached to find new places to practice, and they've made that transition very well. And some I've coached that have been able to go and make better at their current environment, and they've made the relationships better and negotiated new contracts, and then they're happy again. So it can be both situations.
Yeah, you three have really mentioned as physicians are coming in, sometimes there's that need to talk or there's an issue, there's something going on because we do in LifeBridge, it is for, like you said, Dr. Sell, burnout or an issue, but a lot of people come in looking for just some personal development. But those physicians that are coming in struggling with an issue, what kind of shifts are you seeing after, 2 or 3 sessions in coaching?
I think we help provide a new way of looking at some of the issues that they're struggling with, particularly when we're able to sit down and thoroughly go through a disc evaluation, because sometimes the way they are communicating is not always helpful to them. And when they can see that, how they're wired versus the environment that they're in can help them understand that um, their typical behavioral tactics of dealing with a situation is not going to be successful for them in the long run. And if they can just make a couple little tweaks, they'll be much happier. And they can also understand that, some of it is innate in the way they're wired and it's okay. But if, just a little bit of communication pattern change and understanding how that affects other people can make them a lot happier. So, I think that's a big part of what we do is just enlightening and, asking questions and inviting self-reflection and a little bit of growth in that area. Um, but others may want to add to that as well.
I think I would really agree with that. It's kind of fun to see the change and somebody to understand that, hey, there is light at the end of the tunnel, so to speak, and that there are things out there. As you said, we don't tell people what to do. We ask a lot of questions, and it makes them kind of look inside and to see that change. That hey, there are things that I can do. Maybe some little changes. I think sometimes understanding too, like you said, that maybe that's a little bit my fault that I can get better, but you give them the tools to get better. And it's fun to see those changes. And then you can see that they're happier. And then, how was your day? It was great. It's so much better. People respond better, et cetera. So just to see that change.
Yeah, we're addressing communication styles that probably have worked for several years, right? Decades even, but just the way that we practice medicine and communicate with patients and with each other and everything is so different. Generational changes through medicine are so marked and stark, and it's hard when you're trying to keep up with CME and all the guidelines and all the rules and regulations and make sure your coding is right. And then it's like, okay, how am I supposed to talk to them again? Like it can really be overwhelming. And so
Mhm.
even role playing and practicing some of those conversations I found really helpful. Like this comes up, how do you respond? And I have to do this with myself. Like I have to do this with my own staff, like see previous about the disc assessment and like really digging in myself and looking at how each of my staff people responds to me and hears me. Oh man. But yeah, a few small shifts on my part doesn't mean I failed, but just works better for everybody and then empowers them to work better too. And so sometimes it's just yeah, reflecting back some of that information and trying things out.
I think too, like Michelle said it best, when you provide a place to listen to someone and someone is deeply heard, sometimes that's healing in and of itself. And doctors are doing it all day long for their patients, but when does the doctor get to be heard? And so we provide that space for them to just offload all of that burden to someone who's just a neutral listener. And then sometimes that's healing in and of itself. So they unburden themselves, and we get to just listen, ask some questions, provide some insight. And sometimes that's enough to make a change.
And that's not something you can go home and talk to your spouse about at night, or talk to friends about what's going on during the day, with all the HIPAA violations, et cetera. It's just not something. And the other side is that nobody understood, unless they're physicians, they don't understand that anyway. So not only asking the questions, but the other comment is listening, and just letting people talk, and let them know that you are listening to them and you're hearing them as well.
Yeah.
So I know there's a lot of different assessments out, and so some people aren't maybe familiar with the DISC, or there might be like a Myers-Briggs or Gallup Strengths. And I know that you three as coaches have done it yourself. So if you feel comfortable sharing just what people could get an idea for, what was one thing that you took away from your own, that's something that might give people an idea why this might be useful.
Well, I mean, for me personally, the disc showed me about how I am in general, but then when I slide down the scale of stress, how I can come off to other people. And that is so huge because I never realized how I get when I start to get under stress. And more importantly, I know when I'm going down there and I can feel it in my body, but I don't always stop and think about how I'm making other people feel. And that is so huge when it comes to working relationships. And so when you can train yourself to know how you're feeling inside and how you can stop, pause, take a breath, and learn that art of the pause before you react, it's something that we work on our entire lives. But the implications to the people that you work with of how you come off to them, they can misinterpret your communication with them because we're doing it all internally, but they're feeling it. And so it makes a huge impact when you start to catch how you're making other people feel. And it's very personality specific. So everybody has a different way of doing their behaviors. And once you're clued into that and you can be aware of it, the response that you start to give other people, when it changes, other people respond to you differently. So when I started really honing in on that, I noticed the difference immediately. And it makes your communication so much better. It makes you feel better too.
Mine is probably real similar to that. Sometimes when you get stressed, you change, and it let me be aware of that. And it has taught me to pause and think.
Yeah, I realized that in the process of me trying to be a high achiever, trying to, get it all done and do it all well, that was rubbing off on everybody else. And then they had fear of failure, fear of letting me down. And, sometimes it was just like, okay, let's revisit this. And I really noticed it in my encounters with my patients. Like I kept having these encounters that would go sideways. I was like, man, why? Like, how did that escalate? Why was there tension in that room? And then it was happening over and over. And I was like, maybe the problem isn't with everybody else in the room. Maybe it's in my delivery. And it absolutely was. But it was just, excess stress that was sitting right here. And I was not pivoting and adjusting when I needed to. And so, yeah, it was. And then so now, um, my approach, I probably noticed, yeah, I would say definitely it's most of my patient encounters that I've noticed a change. And um, some of that is, just letting them pick, right? Maybe I'm not your best person to see. And maybe there is conflict there. Maybe there's personality conflict and I don't have to fix that. That doesn't mean that I'm flawed because we have, kind of tensions there. And so letting some people self-select, encouraging some people to self-select has been really empowering. And all of that was, like I said, through recognizing that something wasn't sitting right and then looking at myself and how I was acting and how I was presenting myself. And then I had feedback from those who work most directly with me, and I realized that they were just really scared to fail, which is not a good working environment. And then with my patients, I'm much more relaxed now, and I think it's made a difference.
Yeah. Thank you all for sharing. I know sometimes those results can be kind of a personal thing, but talking through that with a coach is really helpful to just put that into perspective. So uh yeah, thank you for sharing. Um, so we hear a lot people that are hesitant about starting coaching. There's a lot of ambiguity around it, and some people might think, is it therapy? Is it counseling? Is it coaching? What is that difference? So, what hesitations or misconceptions do you think, or do you hear that physicians have about starting with a coach?
Well, I think, we can be mistaken for therapy, and I will say that we do have therapists and a psychiatrist, on call to take physicians. We can do a warm handoff to them for when we do identify that, therapy or psychiatric care, potential of meds are needed, and they work with us, and they will take a warm handoff for LifeBridge physicians that are in the program, and they can get you in quicker, and they're really good about that. So because we don't do that, but and so that can be a misconception. But I think we're really good at identifying when that's possible, and I have physicians that have been seen by both psychiatrists and psychologists that we're just we just run in parallel with that, with trying to support the physician while they're receiving that therapy and while they're onboarding medications. And there's still a role for coaching in that, for the everyday things that are not those medications or therapy. So that can be a misconception. But I think also too, like people think when they come into coaching that we're going to give you a bunch of assignments and that there's going to be a lot of homework and there's going to be that, a lot of stuff to do. And, sometimes, when it's mutually agreed upon, we can give some assignments of things to do to make you think mostly, or help you make a list of things to start checking out. Like if you want to explore a nonprofit, if you want to explore, changing your career, we're going to ask some questions to help you get to the next step. So there can be some, assignments, so to speak, but there isn't homework with coaching per se.
I think that the thought that we're therapists, I think, is probably the number one thing, is to think we're going to give therapy sessions similar to a therapist would. And then the other thing I think too is that they're going to spend an hour with us and we're going to tell them what to do, and life is going to be good. And we don't tell them what to do. We make them make their own choices and decisions and help them work down that road. But I think that for me is the other thing, is that they expect us to tell them what to do, and we don't do that.
Coaching is not punishment. It should not be punishment. We're not here to fix you. We're not here because you've done something wrong. And I guess the other thing that might be a little bit of a misconception is like, just so you know, um, you're gonna catch me when you catch me. So when you make a call, it goes through fairly quickly. The last one I took in the grocery store, and so life is real. So you're gonna get a little bit of real life from me too, because I have, this day job and all this stuff. And so it's not rigid or formal. And sometimes it's just uh, it's not physical therapy, right? You're not signing up for an hour 3 times a week for 6 weeks and then we'll reassess. Like there's no structure to it necessarily. And so sometimes it's, an initial kind of get to know you call and things like that. But then if you're good for a while, like I have plenty of people who will pause for weeks, and then we just kind of check in. And so it's not formal and doesn't have to be time consuming. It's just really whatever you need, wherever you need it. And so if it's a text message, twice a month, and then kind of, let's check in after, said time frame and go from there. So you're not obliged, I guess, is what I would say. We just want to do whatever works for you and help you the best way that we can.
Yeah, Dr. Self, thanks for bringing that up. That's a great point. When the steering committee was building this program, that was a key component was, physicians are extremely busy. And so we didn't want to create, it has to be six sessions that you have to meet. It's very flexible. I know that our coaches meet via Zoom. A couple have met in person when it's happened. Some call on their way home after they're leaving, and it's just whenever it works. So yeah, I really appreciate you saying that. Again, like you said, when just to note on the program, when you do call into the line, you do get paired immediately. So our coaches, like she mentioned, are doing something. So it's generally to set up that next meeting. So that first session when you call in, don't think you're calling in to start your first session and sit for an hour. It's really to get connected and then set your first meeting down the road and get set up. So one thing that I hear a lot too when we're talking about coaching is, well, I don't even know what I would talk about with them. Like, what if I don't have a specific issue, but I just know something is off? Like, I don't know what I would talk about. How would you respond to somebody thinking about that?
I usually start with a general intake call, and I ask you all about your life, where you grew up, where you went to medical school, residency, married, children, grandchildren, hobbies, you name it. And sometimes just by asking all those questions, we start digging into issues or digging into things that it's like, hey, there's something there.
And I love to hear the history, the story. I do the same thing. Where did you grow up? And that's what I would do with my patients too. And that's what, as I'm walking through, I make rounds in the hospital and talk to nurses and stuff. And I love talking to students, where are you from? What do you do? What do you want to do? And things. And then when you get into hobbies and stuff, then you start thinking, okay, what are you not doing that you would like to do? Or what are you doing that's not working or is not going as well as you'd like, and you just kind of keep going down and trying to eventually find out what's going on. But I love the history.
First question is not going to be what do you want to get out of coaching? Because that's probably not what you're going to get out of coaching.
Yeah.
Well, I want to pause our questions and just open it up to the people on the call. Any questions that you guys have so far?
Lindsay, John Trapp, I have a question and just trying to really learn from this group. And so, first of all, appreciate all the work done with LifeBridge. Huge supporter of LifeBridge in my current role at Bryan. In my role at Bryan, administrative role, I get the opportunity to, whether asked or not, be in the role of coaching, coaching young physicians as they start their practice, mid-career physicians, retiring physicians, behavioral issues. And so my curiosity about coaching is how do you become a better coach? Because I get thrust into this position whether I want to or not. So I appreciate the work that you do, but I'm really interested in how do I develop better skills as a coach? How to become a better coach, whether that's as I hand off towards LifeBridge or I hand off towards a professional counselor in my regular meetings with physicians. What are ways that you develop your coaching skills to really elevate your ability to connect with high performing physicians, struggling physicians, to get them on the right path?
I actually went off and became a certified integral coach because I really wanted to get really good skills and really understand exactly the things that you're asking. But I do think that there are valuable tools out there, reading articles, really getting good at the DISC profile, or even just the free Myers-Briggs that is available online. Like, people can take a free Myers-Briggs and just, I think because physicians are so analytical and so trained, when people can understand how their brain is wired and their natural go-to and their natural like default mechanism, I think it's then they can start to understand why they're wired the way they are, why they behave the way they are, what their natural personality is. And then they start to feel like they can understand why other people are different and why sometimes there are personality clashes that are just because of the way people are wired. So I've spent a lot of time trying to understand that. And, there are a variety of tools out there. I think, Myers-Briggs has been around the longest and has the most data behind it. And, there are pluses and minuses with using that, but there are a plethora of things out there. And so I think that's a good way to start. But just, reading a lot and, practicing coaching techniques, and getting people to talk, is a really helpful way to get started.
So, Dr. Schaefer, do you believe that the professional coaching certification that you achieved really upskilled you in a tremendous way?
I think it did. Um, like I said, I wanted to make sure that, because we're so hardwired as physicians to get in and figure out a diagnosis and then go and make an assessment and plan. I was really trying to untangle that in myself before I started coaching because we're so eager to try to fix. And I really wanted to step back from that and learn how to coach. And I felt like I needed to do that. I don't think that everybody needs to do that, but I do feel like I needed to do that. Like I don't think everyone in an administrative role needs to necessarily do that, but I felt like I needed to do that to up my skills. To learn how to ask more probing questions, to learn to ask why in a bunch of different ways. I felt like it really helped me, and that's why. And I had the time. I was an empty nester and semi-retired, so that really it gave me something to do for over a year. They're rigorous programs, so you got to dedicate the time to them. So, but they're not for everybody.
Well,
And I
Pete,
think you can read a
So,
lot, like I was saying, to get it. So sorry to cut you off, Michelle.
no, you're good. Um, I don't have time to read a lot, but to piggyback off of that, one of the first things that I had to do was, and I wrote it down right after you asked the question, is remember that I'm not developing the treatment plan. I'm not developing the plan of care, and so it's a shift from what we're used to with
Yeah.
patients and like being here and ahead of them and like filling in the gaps, and they participate in that. But this is totally different, and so just asking a lot of questions. I use the other coaches a lot with just like, hey, how would you how do I navigate this? What would you say? What would you do? So you just like in medicine, using really smart people, but also picking out those people who are good communicators. And so I have some people who have HR backgrounds that I'll just ask, and so like a lot of kind of things like that are helpful. And then um, someone once was giving me parenting advice and said, "Well, Michelle, you're at that point where you're done parenting from in front and now you're parenting from behind." And I just thought about that, and I think that's kind of how coaching is too. Like when you're used to, especially when you're used to, onboarding young physicians or teaching medical students or all that, it's a lot of like coaching from the front. And this, I feel like this is more like coaching from behind for the most part, because we're really just letting people figure it out and just kind of maybe helping to navigate that. So it's just a little bit of a paradigm shift. And I find that when I get hung up with a coaching encounter and same thing, I'll like hang up the phone and be like, what was weird about that? Well, again, I was coaching from the front and I was trying to come up with the plan. And so I'm not perfect by any means. And so not a professional coach, but trying to be a better and better listener. And that's, I think, half the battle.
And I think reassess all the time. Think about, what can I do better? How look retrospectively at what I did? How can I get better? I think reading is good. For us, it doesn't help others as well, but Dr. Schaefer is very good at trying to put on some sessions for us to help us within the program.
Great, thank you.
any other questions? We did have a couple come in through the registration, but one that kind of stuck with me is what are some things that an early or mid-career physician could do to improve the meaning or impact of their work? I think sometimes that comes in through coaching and they just maybe feel like you talked about, you did all this front load training and you're ready to go and you're established, but what can they do to really improve some of that meaning?
I keep going first. Do one of you want to go first?
You're doing great.
Am I allowed to talk?
Yeah. We have
Absolutely.
Well, I've got a few more miles on than some of you. And I call it the gray-haired syndrome. And people start listening to you or believing what you have to say. And I think mid-career physicians are happier if their practices run smoother. And by having run a successful practice that tended to run very smoothly in the OR and very smoothly in the office, because we got along and worked together as a team. I think I view this more as a big brother, big sister, or a teammates program, or like being a fraternity father or fraternity son, pledge son. There's little things that we probably don't recognize as big things that can make their practice run a lot smoother. If the practice runs a lot smoother, they're a lot happier. And so is the rest of the staff that people work with. And if you have a nice, happy place to work, you're going to be happier during the day and happier at night and happier on the weekend, and you can take better care of your patients.
That's very true.
Very.
Very.
One of the things that, one of the exercises when we talk about homework and coaching, one of the exercises it's a famous exercise is thinking about a eulogy that you would want given at your funeral. When you talk about the meaning of your work and the impact that you want to have, that's usually, the generative phase of your life, the back half of the nine, so to speak. Um, when you're thinking about the impact you want to have from the time that you've given in your career and your life, there's an exercise that you do where you write your eulogy and you're talking about the things that you want to be said by you after your passing. And you want it to be spoken to the people in the first three rows of the pews. And you want to think about the things that you left behind. What did you do? What were the things that you achieved in your career? What was the meaning that you left behind of what you spent your time on? So sometimes we use that as a window into the things that you want to think about after you're gone. And it's kind of a morbid sort of way to look at it, but we get past the morbidity part because it opens up the questions about, hey, when it's all said and done, or when I retire, I want to have left this behind. I want to have had my footprint here. I want to be known for having done this. And sometimes it's like, I want to have great, solid relationships with my grandchildren or my children, or I want to repair relationships with X, Y, and Z. That's awesome. How are you going to do that? And so I just ask questions around that. What do you think are the best next steps in order to achieve that? Or I want to have a nonprofit. I want to give back. I want to have a food bank. I want to have this. I want to, set up something with the Galapagos Islands. Okay, great. How are you going to get there? And so we just dream a little bit in that space about what does it look like to have your imprint on the things that matter most to you, and what are the best next steps to start taking those things. The other exercise we can do is the life will, which is it gets at every aspect of your life and you score it. And then you start thinking about the things that you want to do better. You want to score higher in those. You can't be a 10 in all things. You'd never sleep. But sometimes there are areas that you want to give a little bit more to your community, your church, your family, certain relationships, your finances, whatever it is. Sometimes we identify those and those making meaning in those spaces, and then we just talk about the best next steps.
So is there, if somebody was on the fence thinking, do I call LifeBridge? Do I not? Am I ready for coaching? What's one thing you would say to them?
When in doubt,
Answers.
give us a call.
Yeah, say do it. You have nothing to
Just do
lose
it.
by doing it. It costs nothing.
Yeah.
It's all confidential.
Yep.
Most people are going to find that it's very helpful once they get on the phone. And probably that's the hardest part for somebody who's making that first call.
Yeah. Any other questions or thoughts from the group? Well, I do want to just share a couple things here in the last minute. So our CME link, I did drop that into the chat that you can look at. But so if today sparked any questions or interest, LifeBridge is here as a resource. As our coaches on here, they're happy to talk through options, answer any questions that you have, even if you're not ready, and they can just help if you have a question, like would coaching be a good fit? They're happy to do that too. You can call that confidential line that's listed here, and you can either pick a coach or based on what you're calling in for. The call center kind of has an idea about everybody's backgrounds and they'll help pair based on their experiences. Or you can also, my information's there too. You can call me directly and we can get you paired with somebody too. A couple different times our coaches mentioned the confidentiality of this, and I always want to drive this point home. In 2023, the NMA had introduced legislation for LifeBridge, and it passed, and we are the only program in the state that is protected under statute. And so any physician that's participating in this program, they're not obligated to disclose their involvement to any healthcare facility, any hospital, medical staff, personnel, accreditation, anything. And so we really pride ourselves on that, and it's just a security for our physicians. They need a safe space to talk to as well. And then
Can I
finally,
just follow up on that,
oh,
Lindsay?
yeah,
That means that even if you're sued and your lawyer says you can't talk to anybody, you still can talk to us because it's not
yeah,
discoverable.
yes. Yeah. And to that point, somebody else had brought up, I think Dr. Davis, you dealt with a lot of behavioral issues. The other big thing about us is it is completely self-referral. We do not take in requests from different healthcare facilities, hospitals when there's a disciplinary action. I think Dr. Sell said it best. We are not a punishment. We are always on the side of the physician. And so we're never forced to be here. You're never required to be here. We have had physicians come in that said, hey, I'm going to let my employer know that I'm doing this, but we do not share anything from the program with that. So that kind of goes along with that confidentiality piece. And we do have a lot of supporters for our program. Many of those couple were on the call here today. So we appreciate all of the support that we have from our partners there. So unless there's any other final questions from the group, I really appreciate, thank you coaches for all making the time to be on with us this morning. We appreciate you having you here and your experience and insight. So any final things that you guys would want to share?
Just give us a call. Refer a friend.
Yeah, feel free to refer. That's what I would say too. There've been, I mean, I refer people to the program and I think it's gone well for them. So yeah.
And Lindsay, thank you for all you do.
Yes.
Great. Well, thank you guys and enjoy the rest of your morning. And this will be recorded and up on our website too. So we will share that around and feel free to pass it along to people who might be interested in coaching.
Thank you all.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.